My name is Alexander Faranpojo mni. Today I want to welcome you specially to this podcast tagged Impact, Talk and Do. Hello there, my name is Alexander Faranpojo mni. Today I want to welcome you specially to this podcast tagged Impact, Talk and Do. Well, the idea behind it is just to give it a good name that suggests that we're not just passive people who speak a lot of English, but our intention and commitment, which we already have begun, is to talk and do. There are times that conversations must go beyond just the four walls of a room or studio talk, or even the fastest writing finger on a keypad. We must be able to have meaningful conversations and then take action. However, we cannot undermine the importance, the ever-increasing importance for that matter, of having to have sessions of conversations that will steer and shape our thoughts as it regards the actions we will take. It's not enough to just run off for action. There are people who run as messengers without a message. But if you're going to ever be effective, we need to be very articulate, succinct, clear, and very deliberate about what we want to do. On this platform, it is hoped that we'll have conversations that will highlight important, salient, sometimes important factors or issues that must be considered. On this platform, it is my hope that we'll have meaningful conversations. As one who has been privileged to serve in multiple lateral organizations, I have served in the civil service, I have served in the private sector. I presently serve more as a leader of a non-governmental agency organization. I can confidently tell you that though I do have my enterprise efforts, I can tell you that the greatest value of humanity is that it finds people who can steer its next future for the generation coming after. There are times that we think that everything bothers on good governance and especially a good government. But if we look critically at the factors of a real society, what we consider a real society, you will find out that there's a vacuum that can be filled by meaningful people who call themselves leaders. If by any chance we call ourselves elites of any sort from the social perspective or the religious background or academia, we must be interested in how our society, our community is being shaped by the thoughts, philosophies that drive us. At some point, we need to begin to look that the issues of our country is no longer just pure on the government, which is very important and must not undermine, but is also on the shoulder of every citizen. At some point, we need to find where our roles fit. Today's talk is not so much to highlight about the government from the center. We're going to be talking about government from citizens. In other words, the seal of government from you and I as citizens. At some point, we need to look closely. What is my role in the building of a better society? I am indeed an alumnus of the National Institute, and one of the major things you would get if you ever approach the four walls of the Institute in Kurujos is to realize that there is a commitment towards building a better society. That's the mantra. That mantra for me goes beyond just the efforts of a religious organization or just philanthropists of good, kind-hearted thoughts. No, it goes to the very motion of what it means to be alive, that we should never lose our commitment of building a better society. Incidentally, I have a mantra that also aligns called towards making humanity better, that aligns very, very, very properly, with the mantra that says towards a better society. This has driven me towards taking a lot of my actions from profitable to non-profitable efforts to make me take sacrificial missions, take moments like this where I have chosen to find a platform, not just to speak, but to invite others to share in profound thoughts. Today, we'll be looking at the subject of your role in building a better society. I'll be back after this break. Please don't go anywhere. My name is Alexander Faranpojo mni. Today I want to welcome you specially to this podcast tagged Impact, Talk and Do. Welcome back. The power behind the future is that it can be guided from the past. In other words, there are things that we can look to and understand what the future can look like. You see, someone once said that we live life forward, but we understand it backwards. To gain a good understanding of how our society has evolved, or perhaps should I say, what our society can evolve into, what countries have ever evolved that we can draw learnings from and perhaps application for a better society? The truth is that our country, Nigeria, is very blessed. Multi-ethical, multilateral, multi-religious, multi-tribal. It has a whole lot to still offer. The natural wealth that we've been given, the resourcefulness of our human, the people that live right here, the brilliance of our people is something not to ever ignore. Everywhere across the world where a Nigerian is represented, vigor, strength, courage, excellence, distinction, hard work has always represented our people. Yet, what can be wrong with our society where we have so much poverty still going on, so much backwardness, so much disaster in the light of such opulence, And we will ask ourselves these questions sometimes to the closure of taking placards, to the closure of rioting or doing strong, aggressive and pressure group reactions or strikes and strike actions. But then we should also wonder, what is the most effective way of giving rise to a better society? I have a video that I have watched. I think it's a true video summarized in a graphic illustration of the story of China from 1981 to the year 2020, thereabout.
In 1981, 88% of Chinese people lived in extreme poverty. That's 878 million people. By 2020, that number hit zero. How did they do it? This is the largest poverty reduction in human history, and most people have no idea how it happened. When China opened up in 1978, nearly 9 out of 10 people were desperately poor, living on less than $2 a day. Rural villages with no electricity, no roads, no opportunity. The government made poverty elimination a national mission. Not a goal, a requirement. They started with special economic zones, Shenzhen, Shanghai, coastal cities that could trade with the world. Factories opened, jobs appeared. Hundreds of millions of rural workers moved to cities for manufacturing jobs. This was phase 1, economic growth. From 1981 to 2012, 753 million people escaped poverty through industrialization and urbanization. But that left 100 million people behind. The hardest cases: remote villages, disabled people, ethnic minorities in mountain regions. In 2013, President Xi Jinping launched targeted poverty alleviation, not general economic policy. Specific intervention for every poor household. They sent 3 million officials to poor villages, each official responsible for specific families. If those families didn't escape poverty, the official failed. The government built roads to villages that never had them, installed electricity, ran water lines, connected remote areas to the national grid. They relocated 9.6 million people from uninhabitable regions, gave them new homes, new jobs, new lives. They identified why each household was poor. Lack of education, build schools, no jobs, create industries, medical debt, provide health care. Customized solutions for 100 million people. The government spent 1.6 trillion yuan. That's $246 billion over 8 years. Local governments were evaluated on poverty reduction. Miss your targets and your career is over. By February 2021, China declared victory. All 832 poor counties lifted out of poverty, all 128,000 villages, all 98.99 million rural people. The World Bank confirmed it. The UN praised it. This wasn't propaganda. This was measurable, verifiable poverty elimination. No other country has ever done this. Not at this scale. Not this fast. India still has over 200 million people in extreme poverty. Sub-Saharan Africa has over 400 million. China went from 878 million to 0 in 40 years. The method was simple: massive investment, government accountability, customized intervention, and treating poverty elimination like a war that had to be won.
If you watch this video, it will speak to the very value of human life. That societies don't just change without a definite phenomenon. Philosophies guide actions. If it is true that our society must change, we will need a driving philosophy that can sustain that change, not temporarily, but generationally. We must have something that inspires our actions and we can pass it on to our generations for something to live for. When a society does not have a very definite line of action, whatever change it experiences is only temporal. It's a matter of time. It will go back to its original default. Talking about culture, it is strategy for launch. And see the power of what China did. That 878 million people thereabout were brought out of poverty in about a couple of years. Something significant in a lifetime. That one can see the start of the story and still be alive by the time the journey is completed. That almost everyone, about 88% people in China as of 1981, were reduced in the number from 870 million people to 0 by 2020. This is something to really remark. Today I want to say that Nigeria can be blessed again. And my conviction is that while we wait for the center of gravity, which is the federal government, to introduce the national change structure, which I can dare tell you is already going on. Some of it we will see in this tenure, some of it we may never see. But if you're ever close to structure, you will see that efforts are going at different levels to make impact and make changes. But you will never have a society that is devoid of people with clandestine and subterfuge motives that will always come to denigrate and bring regression to every effort to make progress. So we see that from the center, efforts may be going on, but that effort is not evenly distributed. So our conclusion will be that nothing is going on. And that's what I want to speak to. The gap between good intention of great leadership and the gap between the execution of poor masses towards the poor masses by the medium that has been designed to facilitate these changes to the people. For example, let me make a very simple case in point, is the case of power.
And one of our top stories tonight, President Bola Tinubu has approved a 3.3 trillion naira payment plan to settle debts in the power sector. The approval comes as electricity consumers reel under outages arising from load shedding triggered by a sharp decline in power generation, largely due to gas supply shortages that have constrained output from thermal plants. The debt repayment plan followed the final review of legacy debts that have bedeviled the power sector for more than a decade.
What happened to all of that money? Where did it go to? If they were truly released for power, how come this same money is being released to pay debt? Is it the same debt? Is it a different one? Can we have some level of accountability? And that's where the case stands. That's where we have the challenge. Therein lies the challenge, like we say. So I am speaking today to leadership at the community level, that before we ever find people who will represent us at states, even local government or general level states or senates or the House of Rep or even the federal structure as ministers or directors or something, everyone belongs to a family. Everyone belongs to a home. I'm confident that the change that we need must start from our homes. We must be able to define a national value for ourselves as a country and let it be well represented in the home. The truth is that things will not significantly change until we begin to build for a generation that shares common value for change. Already, I will say that some things are too late for the generation that is, but then the generation to come is still, there are still people that can be saved. We can still have a great salvage from there, that we will know that these ones were not part of the corruption, neither were they opportune to see the deficit of good governance. But then, with a common interest, a focused ambition, a committed hand, we'll find out that there's a generation that can truly turn the story around in our lifetime. Now, things are running out very fast, spiraling downwards, but I want to say that it begins with a vision of good leadership. It begins with a vision of good leadership. And I'm saying that that vision of good leadership must come with a national creed and cascade down to every home. Today, we have people who give back to children without any cost or commitment to taking care of them. Just predictable to know that those children without care and love will grow up someday to become desperate to survive. After all, what else do you expect a person who is alive and needs to survive to do? What do you expect him to do or her to do? Such a person was going to succumb him or herself, his or herself, to any kind of means possible just for survival. So I'm speaking to the leadership that is at community level. From right where we are, we need to start to speak to ourselves. Start to steer the conversation as though we are concerned with our neighbor. Start to have conversations that start from now. Today we might not have the president that will fix the whole country, but from that your neighborhood, the next president is coming forth. And I think that the journey can start from now. If it is true to take about 40 years to rebuild a president, for example, perhaps 40 years from now is possible to straighten up the crookedness of our society. So what's my mission? What's my call today? Not just to talk English, but to invite you to, first of all, realize that there's a binding force that makes all of us agree to stay alive. And that is the value for human life. I'm speaking today about the need to know that we go far beyond the barriers of religion, the barriers of culture or tradition or tribe. We must start to have very precious regard for the human life. I think that nothing connects us better than the citizenry of being human. That we are human is enough reason for us to lend respect one to another. And today I am simply saying that we must begin to value the life of ourselves and of our neighbor. To know that life exists and has sanctity. That you are not allowed to undermine the power of any life, especially the one that you are not capable of creating. God, who has made us together, did not necessarily make us with tribes or any other thing, but the compounding and compelling factor that should bring all of us together, in my considered opinion, is the sanctity of the human life. Today, we are in a quagmire of having to ask ourselves that frantic question: what is the true value of a human life today? What is the true value of a human life, a Nigerian human life? Once we start to put more sanctity on that, it will reflect in our passports. It will reflect in what we condone. You see, today, someone sees his little action of throwing the water bag he drank water from, or the plastic bottle, or the pep bottle he took water from, and throws it on the floor from a bus he's driving in, and thinks that that act has no consequence on human life. No. Every action must be considered with on the premise of its impact to human life. That little gesture will go somewhere, gather clusters somewhere, and bring about some kind of erosion to some ground, or bring some problem to someone's farmland. The far-reaching effect of a butterfly flapping its wings here in Nigeria is said to have great effect far away in India. So today, I will leave us with these thoughts. What is the value of human life? On this platform, we'll be talking some more about these issues, about highlighting how human life can be better valued, highlighting how that the philosophy of the value of human life driving our policies, driving our actions, informing the quality of roads that is built, informing the quality of inspection that we make for houses that will be built, or even the quality of food that we take in. It all should be premised on the value for human life. I believe that with the sanctity of this human life, people will start to pay more attention on what the life really means and what it deserves. Perhaps we'll have less and less of people doing some strange wickedness one to another. I'm looking forward to a time when our country will begin to demonstrate this value at a nationalistic level, on our national passport, on our flags, and show the sanctity that beyond anything built, beyond any society that we crave for, beyond any road that is built, what should be the driving force and philosophy to inform such action should be that human life is truly valued. What's your value for human life? What do you think about the discussion? Please share your comments and opinions in the comments below, and I'd like to read and respond back to you. We'll take this conversation further and further. The program is Impact Talk and Do. I'll look forward to seeing you again. Till then, God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Nigeria, we